The ancient hills of rural Massachusetts hold secrets whispered on the wind from isolated homesteads and forgotten hollows, secrets far older than the first European settlers, secrets that predate humanity itself. And amongst these desolate, decaying places, none is perhaps more unsettling, more profoundly disturbing than the cursed hamlet of Dunwich, a name that falls from the lips like a dry curse, a place where sanity frays and the cosmic fabric thins to reveal horrors best left unimagined. And it is into this geographical wound upon the earth that we plunge today, to unearth the festering dread of H.P. Lovecraft's The Dunwich Horror, a tale of bad blood, invisible threats, and the ultimate folly of forbidden rituals, a narrative that chills not merely with its monsters, but with the chilling implication of our species' utter insignificance in a universe populated by entities of unimaginable power and alien intent. Dunwich itself is a character, almost, a landscape of decrepit farmhouses, gnarled ancient trees, and brooding conical hills shrouded in mist, a place shunned by the outside world, populated by inbred peculiar folk whose ancestors have intermarried for generations, fostering a general air of degeneracy and intellectual decline. A perfect incubator, in fact, for the specific strain of cosmic horror that Lovecraft so masterfully cultivates. And it is within this isolation, amidst a population already teetering on the edge of the abnormal, that the truly monstrous emerges from the lineage of the Whateleys, a family whose name has long been synonymous with strangeness and dark rumours. Old Whateley, the patriarch, is a wizened albino man with a face like a dried apple, his eyes holding a disturbing glint of ancient knowledge and malefic intent. A man who lives in a decaying farmhouse on Sentinel Hill, surrounded by strange circles of stone and possessing an unnerving library of forbidden texts, foremost among them a Latin copy of the infamous Necronomicon. And his daughter Lavinia is an equally unsettling figure, a grotesque albino herself, hunchbacked with a vacant, half-witted expression, though her eyes, when they meet yours, betray a flicker of desperate animalistic intelligence. And it is from this unholy union, or rather from a horrific non-human liaison orchestrated by old Whateley, that our central figure, Wilbur Whateley, is born on the vernal equinox of 1913. The circumstances of Wilbur's birth are immediately unsettling, marking him as an outsider even among the strange denizens of Dunwich. For old Whateley is observed on the highest peak of Sentinel Hill, chanting strange incantations under a moon that seems unnaturally large and close, calling upon something from beyond the spheres of man. And 9 months later, Lavinia gives birth to a son, a child whose paternal lineage remains an unspoken, terrifying mystery, a secret that old Whateley guards with fanatical zeal, though the knowing glances of the Dunwich folk suggest a suspicion far more disturbing than mere human illegitimacy. And from his very first days, Wilbur is an anomaly, growing at an alarming and unnatural rate, reaching the size of a 10-year-old by the age of 3, his limbs long and spindly, his face already possessing an unpleasant goat-like aspect, his skin coarse and dark, his chin pointed, and his hair black and wiry. And what's more, he possesses a voice that is disturbingly deep and resonant, a booming baritone even as a child, an auditory anomaly that adds to his already unsettling appearance, further cementing his reputation as something other. As Wilbur grows, his strangeness only intensifies. He develops an unnatural precocity, demonstrating an almost supernatural grasp of languages and ancient lore, poring over his grandfather's forbidden tomes with an intensity that belies his tender years, particularly the Latin Necronomicon, which he studies with an obsessive fervour, his grandfather meticulously teaching him the complex blasphemous rituals and the dire implications of the texts. For old Whateley believes that a time is coming, a great cataclysm when the old ones will return, and Wilbur is to be the harbinger of this new, terrifying age, preparing the way for entities beyond human comprehension. And during this time, a pervasive air of menace begins to settle over the Whateley farmhouse, the once unremarkable structure now seeming to pulsate with a dark, hidden energy, and locals report strange, cyclical phenomena emanating from the property. Bizarre lights flickering in the upper windows at night, unearthly, indescribable sounds emanating from the attic or the upper floors, sounds that defy any known animal or human origin, sounds that suggest something vast, unseen and profoundly disturbing is dwelling within the house, growing alongside Wilbur, hidden from human eyes, yet palpable in its sheer oppressive presence. And a particularly horrifying detail emerges when the Whateleys begin to buy an increasingly large quantity of livestock from neighbouring farms, primarily cows and goats, but no one ever sees the animals again, nor do they see any signs of them being butchered or consumed, merely their unexplained disappearance, which, combined with the grotesque sounds and the burgeoning, inexplicable stench of a charnel house that occasionally wafts from the Whateley property, leads to widespread speculation and outright terror among the Dunwich populace, who, though accustomed to oddities, find the Whateley situation pushing the very limits of their rustic tolerance for the abnormal, leading them to avoid the farmstead altogether, crossing themselves and murmuring protective prayers whenever they must pass within earshot. Wilbur's appearance continues its distressing evolution. By the age of 10, he resembles a full-grown man, but one twisted and wrong, his features even more pronouncedly simian and goat-like, his limbs gangly and disproportionate, his gait an awkward shuffle, and the only human element left to his visage are his eyes, which, though dark and unnervingly intelligent, carry a strangely familiar glint to those who'd known old Whateley, suggesting a continuation of that familial, though unholy, legacy. And it is at this stage that old Whateley, nearing his end, begins to explicitly speak of the coming of the old ones, of the impending destruction of humanity, and of Wilbur's destiny as their herald, uttering cryptic pronouncements about the gate and the key, about Yog-Sothoth who knows the gate, and about the ritualistic preparations necessary to facilitate the entity's passage into this dimension. For the thing upstairs, the invisible presence, is growing into something immense and monstrous, and old Whateley charges Wilbur with the solemn, terrifying duty of continuing these rituals after his death, ensuring the proper care and feeding of the unseen entity, and also with obtaining further texts, particularly another copy of the Necronomicon, in its original Greek, which is vital for the completion of the ultimate summoning ritual. When old Whateley finally succumbs to old age in 1928, Dunwich breathes a collective, though temporary, sigh of relief, imagining that the strange happenings at Sentinel Hill might at last cease. But they are gravely mistaken, for shortly after his grandfather's demise, Lavinia Whateley disappears, her fate unknown, though the lingering stench and a few telltale bloodstains found on the property hint at a far more gruesome end than simple flight, suggesting she was not merely gone, but consumed. And now, alone with his monstrous invisible sibling, Wilbur finds himself under immense pressure, the demands of the unseen entity growing more insistent, its monstrous size now requiring larger and larger sacrifices, forcing Wilbur to become bolder in his acquisition of livestock, sometimes resorting to outright theft, further terrifying the villagers. But the pressure to complete the ritual, to find the necessary texts, particularly the Greek Necronomicon, drives him to desperate measures, pushing him out of the isolation of Dunwich and into the wider, more civilized world. Wilbur, though outwardly monstrous and unsettling, possesses an intellect honed by years of studying forbidden lore, and his search for the Greek Necronomicon leads him to the hallowed halls of Miskatonic University in Arkham, a place of academic rigour and intellectual pursuit, but also, as Lovecraft often reminds us, a repository of dark knowledge, where, protected in their special collections, lie certain volumes too dangerous for casual perusal. And it is here, in the late hours of a fateful night, that Wilbur Whateley, driven by an unholy imperative, attempts to steal the university's copy of the Greek text, which, as it turns out, is protected by a strong ward-bearing lock. And it is in this act of attempted thievery that Wilbur finally meets his end, a gruesome and shocking conclusion to his unnatural life. For the university librarian, Dr. Henry Armitage, a man of advanced years but still possessing a keen intellect and a deep understanding of arcane lore, is alerted to the break-in. And upon confronting Wilbur, he witnesses a sight that shatters his academic composure and forever scars his memory. For as Wilbur attempts to flee, he is attacked by a guard dog, and the sudden violent impact rips his clothes, revealing his true horrific form, a form that transcends human understanding and plunges Armitage into the deepest abysses of primordial dread. The dog's attack tears away the fabric of Wilbur's disguise, revealing something truly unspeakable beneath his human-like clothes. For what is revealed is a creature with a torso of scaly reptilian skin, a central body from which multiple appendages protrude, some tentacular, some rudimentary legs, all covered in suckers and mouths, and emanating from various points on this nightmare anatomy are eyes, dozens of eyes, lidless and unblinking, eyes that stare into the abyss and reflect its profound indifference. And as this hideous form is momentarily exposed, a burst of noisome, unearthly odours fills the library, the stench of ages, of dimensions unknown, and Wilbur's blood, when it spills, is not red, but a sickly, yellowish-green ichor, thick and viscous, and the creature, in its dying throes, emits a guttural alien cry that seems to vibrate the very foundations of reality, a sound that is both a scream and a cosmic moan, before it collapses into a rapidly dissolving, gelatinous mass, leaving behind only the tattered remnants of its clothing and a pervasive, nauseating stench. And this sight, this revelation, is so utterly anathema to human reason that Dr. Armitage, despite his extensive knowledge of the arcane, is almost broken by it, understanding in that horrific instant that Wilbur Whateley was not merely a monstrous man, but something far, far worse. A hybrid, a blasphemous offspring of a human mother and an unknown, unearthly father. A creature whose very existence defied natural law and cosmic order. And it is this horrifying truth that drives him to action, for he knows, with a certainty that chills him to the bone, that Wilbur was merely one part of a larger, far more dreadful equation. And the thing at Dunwich, the creature that Wilbur had nurtured now without its caretaker, will inevitably unleash itself upon the world. The death of Wilbur Whateley in Arkham is not an end, but merely the prelude to an even greater horror. For back in Dunwich, with Wilbur gone, the invisible entity, the brother who had been trapped in the Whateley farmhouse, begins to stir with an uncontrollable hunger and a burgeoning destructive rage, and the subtle hints of its presence become overt, then terrifyingly manifest, as its monstrous form, still largely unseen, breaks free of the decaying farmstead, shattering its walls and tearing apart the very ground around it. And the cosmic entity, liberated from its prison, begins an indiscriminate rampage, its invisible form rendering it immune to conventional defense, its immense power allowing it to flatten trees, destroy buildings, and leave a trail of utter devastation and widespread panic in its wake, and the unseen horror manifests its presence through its devastating impact on the landscape by the enormous 30-foot-wide circular tracks it leaves in fields, crushing everything in its path, by the shattering of windows and the splintering of ancient houses as it passes through them, and by the horrific, indescribable sounds that accompany its movements. A cyclopean slurping, a nauseating squishing, a multi-ton rumble that seems to shake the very bones of the earth, and an utterly alien, guttural booming that makes the very air vibrate with its unholy power. And the sheer scale of the destruction, combined with the utterly invisible nature of the assailant, plunges the already superstitious and isolated people of Dunwich into a frenzy of fear and helplessness, as cattle are found gruesomely mutilated, barns are torn asunder, and eventually human lives are lost, their bodies found in unimaginable states of dismemberment or sometimes entirely absent, hinting at an even more gruesome fate, leaving the surviving villagers in a state of catatonic terror, realizing that whatever ancient evil has been hinted at in their folklore has now manifested itself in a physical, though unseen, form, threatening to wipe Dunwich off the map, and then, perhaps, extend its destructive reach to the wider world. Meanwhile, Dr. Armitage, having barely recovered from the shocking revelation of Wilbur Whateley's true form, now receives frantic telegrams from Dunwich describing the escalating devastation, confirming his gravest fears, and realizing the immense danger. He knows he cannot face this cosmic threat alone, for the forces at play are far beyond the scope of a single scholar. And so he enlists the aid of two trusted colleagues from Miskatonic University, Dr. Warren Rice, a professor of classical languages, and Professor Francis Morgan, an expert in archaeology, both men of formidable intellect and open-minded enough to accept the horrifying truths that Armitage must now lay before them. And Armitage, with a heavy heart and a voice filled with a terrible certainty, explains the full, dreadful implications of Wilbur's parentage and the true nature of the thing at Dunwich, identifying the father as none other than Yog-Sothoth, the outer god, the sentient gateway between dimensions, the all-in-one and one-in-all, whose non-Euclidean presence pervades all time and space. And he reveals that the invisible thing terrorizing Dunwich is Wilbur's full-blooded brother, a purely alien entity, a horrifying manifestation of Yog-Sothoth's essence, bred with a human for the sole purpose of paving the way for the ultimate invasion, the return of the Great Old Ones, and the subsequent annihilation of humanity. Armed with this terrifying knowledge, and with the conviction that they are the only ones who can prevent a global catastrophe, the three scholars resolve to confront the invisible horror. but they know that conventional weapons are utterly useless against such a being, and that only knowledge, only the very rituals and incantations contained within the forbidden books can hope to banish it back to its extra-dimensional prison. And so they meticulously prepare themselves, consulting the same dread texts that Wilbur and his grandfather had used, but with an opposing intent, seeking the counterspells, the banishing rituals, the ancient formula designed to repel entities of cosmic malevolence, and they gather certain arcane ingredients and symbols, preparations that hint at the esoteric nature of the battle they are about to undertake, understanding that they are not merely fighting a beast, but a force of nature, a fragment of an alien god. And their journey to Dunwich is one fraught with a quiet, scholarly dread, for they are walking into a nightmare, consciously engaging with horrors that would drive lesser men mad. But their resolve is unwavering, knowing the fate of the world hinges on their success. Upon their arrival in Dunwich, the scholars are met with a scene of utter desolation, confirming the terrifying scope of the invisible entity's rampage. Houses are shattered, crops are flattened, and the air is thick with a nauseating stench and an oppressive, palpable fear that clings to everything. And they are shown the monstrous circular tracks left by the unseen creature, tracks of an unimaginable circumference, and they hear the distant disturbing sounds of its destructive progress, the booms and slurps that echo through the valleys, confirming its immense size and devastating power, and their investigation leads them to the summit of Sentinel Hill, to the ruins of the Whateley farmhouse, which has been almost completely obliterated, leaving behind a crater of raw, exposed earth. And it is here, among the shattered stones and the lingering odour of cosmic decay, that the scholars set their trap, choosing this location because it is the birthplace of the horror, the focal point of the ritual, and thus perhaps the weakest link in its alien connection to this world, for they know they must banish it from whence it came. The final confrontation is a terrifying display of arcane power and human courage, as the three scholars, standing amidst the ruins of the Whateley farm, begin their desperate ritual, chanting ancient, complex incantations in Latin and Greek, their voices rising and falling in hypnotic rhythm, and they cast a spell of visibility, a desperate attempt to force the unseen entity to manifest, at least partially, within the human spectrum of sight, knowing that to see it fully might mean instant madness, but that to see it at all would allow them to target it, to focus their banishing will, and as their voices echo across the desolate hill, the air grows heavy. The very fabric of reality seems to ripple and distort. And then a monstrous, half-seen presence begins to coalesce, a cyclopean, protoplasmic horror of incredible size, its form glimpsed only as a kaleidoscopic nightmare of shifting colours, translucent membranes, and iridescent surfaces, a towering column of grotesque alien flesh, studded with eyes and mouths and suckers, tentacles and pseudopods, an indescribable monstrosity that seems to defy all known geometry and physical law. A truly Lovecraftian vision of cosmic terror made manifest. An entity so vast and so alien that the human mind struggles to process its very existence, almost immediately threatening the sanity of the onlookers. As the scholars press on with their banishing rituals, their incantations growing more urgent and powerful, the visible-invisible monster reacts with unholy fury, its cyclopean movements causing the ground to tremble, its unseen blows shattering more of the surrounding landscape, as if the very entity resented being drawn even partially into the human sphere of perception. and it emits an ear-splitting cosmic howl, a sound that is both a shriek of pain and a roar of pure, unadulterated hatred. A sound that vibrates through the bones and threatens to burst the eardrums of the brave scholars. And the intensity of the struggle is immense. A battle not of brute force, but of arcane will against raw, alien power. And as the incantations reach their fever pitch, the invisible entity, despite its immense power, begins to recoil. Its immense form slowly, agonizingly shrinking and distorting, a clear sign that the banishing spell is working, pushing it back, wrenching it away from this dimension, and the air is filled with the sounds of its dying protestations, a cacophony of slithering, gurgling, and multi-ton squishing, until, with a final unearthly shriek that tears at the very fabric of space, the monster seems to implode, vanishing completely from sight, leaving behind only a lingering, nauseating stench, the smell of burnt cosmic dust and something indescribably foul, and the profound, oppressive silence that follows its disappearance is more terrifying than any sound, signalling the abrupt end of the immediate threat. In the aftermath, as the scholars stand exhausted, their sanity barely clinging to them, their mission seemingly accomplished, a disembodied voice, booming and resonant, fills the air above Sentinel Hill. A voice that is not human, a voice that seems to emanate from the very void between stars. And this voice, speaking in the ancient Aklo tongue, utters the most horrifying revelation of all, confirming beyond any shadow of a doubt the true nature of the Dunwich Horror. "Father, Father Yog-Sothoth!" it cries, the words echoing with an unearthly finality. And this spectral utterance confirms that the entity they had just banished was indeed the full-blooded brother of Wilbur Whateley, and that their father, the progenitor of this unspeakable lineage, was none other than the cosmic entity Yog-Sothoth himself, the outer god, who exists as the key and guardian of the gate, simultaneously the gate and the key, the past, present and future, the omniscient and omnipresent entity of cosmic chaos, who had mated with Lavinia Whateley in a blasphemous ritual orchestrated by old Whateley to produce these monstrosities, and this final chilling confirmation utterly shatters any remaining illusions of human supremacy or safety, for it reveals the true depth of the cosmic conspiracy, the ease with which our reality can be breached by entities beyond our comprehension, and the terrifying possibility that such incursions are not isolated incidents, but part of a larger, terrifying design. The thematic resonance of the Dunwich Horror is as profound and unsettling as its plot, delving deeply into the interconnected horrors of bad blood, invisible threats and forbidden rituals, each element weaving together to create a tapestry of cosmic dread that leaves an indelible mark upon the reader's psyche. And central to this is the chilling concept of bad blood, which permeates the Whateley lineage like a genetic curse, a taint passed down through generations of inbreeding and association with dark forces. For the degenerate, isolated inhabitants of Dunwich already carry a distinct air of abnormality, their ancestors having intermarried to the point of fostering physical and mental decline. And into this already compromised gene pool, old Whateley deliberately introduces an alien cosmic element, essentially creating a hybrid species, a monstrous bridge between humanity and the outer gods, and Wilbur Whateley is the grotesque culmination of this unholy breeding program, his physical deformities and rapid growth symptomatic of this profound biological corruption, his body a living testament to the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human ken, and his very existence poses a terrifying question. What happens when humanity, in its arrogance or desperation, attempts to merge with the cosmic? The answer, as Lovecraft chillingly illustrates, is not evolution, but abomination, a regression into a form utterly anathema to life as we know it, a creature whose very blood is alien, whose very cells are an insult to the natural order. And this notion of inherited, almost predetermined horror, where the sins of the father, or the cosmic progenitor, are visited upon the offspring in the most literal and physical sense, adds a layer of fatalism and unavoidable doom to the narrative, suggesting that some destinies, once set in motion by forbidden acts, cannot be escaped. Furthermore, the story masterfully exploits the terror of invisible threats, crafting a horror that is all the more potent for its unseen nature, for the thing upstairs, Wilbur's monstrous brother, is almost entirely unperceivable by human senses for much of the narrative. A vast, growing presence whose existence is hinted at only through its effects. The grotesque sounds, the nauseating stench, the unexplained consumption of livestock, and the growing devastation it leaves in its wake. And this invisibility is a brilliant narrative device, for it taps into our primal fear of the unknown, of that which lurks just beyond the veil of our perception. And the human mind, confronted with an unseen menace, often conjures images far more terrifying than any tangible monster could ever be. And Lovecraft understood this psychological truth perfectly, using the unseen nature of the entity to amplify the dread, forcing the reader to imagine the unspeakable, to fill in the horrifying blanks with their own worst nightmares. And the monster's initial invisibility also symbolizes humanity's limited perception of the cosmos, our inability to truly comprehend the vast, alien intelligences and entities that exist just outside our sensory range, the true horrors that populate the universe yet are utterly indifferent to our existence. And the chilling implication is that these invisible entities are always there, always present, existing on planes of reality inaccessible to us, and it is only when their actions bleed into our dimension that we become agonizingly, terrifyingly aware of their presence. And this particular monster's temporary forced visibility during the climactic ritual serves only to confirm our worst fears, proving that the unseen was indeed far more hideous than anything imaginable. A kaleidoscope of non-Euclidean flesh and alien sensory organs, cementing the idea that some things are best left unseen, for their very visual comprehension risks shattering the fragile edifice of human sanity. Finally, at the core of the Dunwich horror lies the profound danger of forbidden rituals and the acquisition of ancient blasphemous knowledge, particularly through texts like the Necronomicon, and old Whateley's obsession with this grimoire, his deliberate invocation of Yog-Sothoth, and his upbringing of Wilbur to be a vessel and a herald, all illustrate the catastrophic consequences of meddling with powers beyond human comprehension. For the Necronomicon is not merely a book. It is a gateway, a compendium of spells and incantations designed to pierce the veil between dimensions, to summon entities of cosmic malevolence, and the rituals detailed within its pages promise immense power but demand an unspeakable price, often the very sanity, souls, or existence of those who dare to perform them. And Lovecraft uses these rituals as a symbol of humanity's intellectual hubris, our insatiable desire to understand, to control, to transcend our limitations, even if it means venturing into realms where sanity is shattered and reality itself is undone. And the Whateleys, driven by a twisted desire for cosmic power and the misguided belief that they can manipulate these ancient forces, ultimately unleash a horror that they cannot control, proving that some knowledge is indeed too dangerous, too destructive for human hands. And the irony, of course, is that the very tools used by old Whateley and Wilbur to summon and nurture the horror are ultimately turned against it by the scholars, who must delve into the same forbidden knowledge to find the means of banishment, highlighting the double-edged sword of arcane lore, a potent force that can both create and destroy. And the story serves as a stark warning. The universe holds secrets that are not meant for human eyes or minds, and to seek them out, to perform the ancient rites, is to court not merely danger, but existential annihilation. For the great old ones, the outer gods, are not deities to be worshipped or controlled, but cosmic forces of nature, utterly alien and indifferent, whose very existence threatens to unravel the fabric of our fragile reality. The Dunwich Horror stands as a crucial pillar within the sprawling edifice of the Cthulhu mythos, deepening our understanding of its cosmic geography and its pantheon of terrifying entities. For it is in this tale that the outer god Yog-Sothoth is most explicitly detailed and demonstrated as a progenitor, solidifying his role as the opener of the way, the key and the gate, an entity not merely of immense power, but of vast, incomprehensible knowledge and an ubiquitous presence across all dimensions and time. And the story's direct connection to the Necronomicon further cements its importance, emphasizing the grimoire's central role as the ultimate source of forbidden knowledge, the manual for cosmic dread that permeates so much of Lovecraft's work. And the portrayal of Dunwich itself, a remote, isolated and degenerate rural community, establishes a recurring motif in Lovecraft's geography of horror, demonstrating how such secluded locales, often forgotten by the march of progress, become breeding grounds or vulnerable points for incursions from beyond, reinforcing the idea that the ancient, the rural and the isolated are often closest to the raw, untamed forces of the universe. And the tale also showcases Lovecraft's masterful use of atmospheric horror, building dread through suggestive descriptions, half-glimpsed horrors, and the slow revelation of an unspeakable truth, rather than relying on jump scares or conventional monsters. And the story's influence on subsequent horror literature and media is undeniable, shaping how authors and filmmakers approach themes of cosmic terror, invisible threats, and the dangers of genetic corruption, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to resonate with audiences who appreciate a horror that chills the intellect as much as it frightens the senses. The chilling echo of the Dunwich Horror lingers long after the final page, a testament to Lovecraft's unparalleled ability to evoke a specific, profound sense of cosmic dread. A reminder that humanity's place in the universe is fleeting, insignificant, and constantly threatened by entities beyond our wildest nightmares, for the tale leaves us with the unsettling certainty that the gates between worlds are thin, that ancient evils slumber but do not die, and that the bloodlines of the earth can be corrupted by forces from the farthest reaches of the void. And so, the next time you find yourself alone in a forgotten rural landscape, perhaps near an ancient brooding hill, listen closely to the wind, for you might just hear the distant cyclopean slurping of something unspeakable, a sound that promises the return of the old ones and the utter annihilation of all that you hold dear. And if you've been as utterly enthralled and chilled to the bone by this journey into Lovecraftian terror as I have, please consider liking this video. It truly helps us spread the word about these ancient eldritch horrors And of course, if you crave more explorations into the dark corners of the Cthulhu mythos and the incredible tales of H.P. Lovecraft, make sure to subscribe for more Lovecraft videos, ensuring you don't miss a single descent into madness and cosmic despair. Because there are always more stories, more entities, and more unimaginable horrors waiting to be uncovered in the boundless, indifferent reaches of the universe.